Are the heydays of print and television media over? Are mic-wielding influencers your new reporters?
The media landscape is just changing everything all the time and it's actually defining our consciousness.
There's a statement that you made that traditional media is broken.
It is far too often a mouthpiece of whosoever is in power.
Today, anyone can be a journalist, right? If you have a mic, you have a platform, you have Instagram Live.
There is far too much scope now to talk about I, me, myself. It's don't go on about me, me, me. Look outside yourself.
In terms of press freedom, of course, our country's been ranking rather poorly. How safe would you say today journalists are?
Journalism is not for those who are faint of heart. Journalists in the districts are much more unsafe than Delhi journalists.
Do you think the scope of women's safety has expanded, has become better, strengthened after MeToo?
I think people are careful about women.
I have with me today Saba Naqvi. She's an author and veteran journalist. Hello and welcome to What India Needs podcast with me, Shutapa Paul. As per a report, 93% people get their news from YouTube, 88% get it from Facebook and Instagram, and 82% get their news from instant messaging platforms like WhatsApp. Are the heydays of print and television media over? Are mic-wielding influencers your new reporters? Discussing all this and more, I have with me today Saba Naqvi. She's an author and veteran journalist. Saba, thank you for speaking to us on What India Needs podcast.
Thank you so much, Shutapa. It's entirely my pleasure. I love all new innovative things and I think you're trying something like that.
Right.
Thank you.
So, there's a statement that you made. It was on your personal website as well, that traditional media is broken. And this is what we are trying to also explore. Let's talk about that statement. What made you kind of say that?
So I deal with personal media, with traditional media. I engage with them. I also engage with new media. And I can see the media landscape is just changing everything all the time and it's actually defining our consciousness also. It's a technology also that's defining our consciousness. It's the phone. It's this device. So when I say the media is broken, it is simply that, first of all, it is far too often a mouthpiece of whosoever is in power. And this happens with different gradations. It is about the traditional media needing, it gets back to the financial aspect of it, wanting to get government advertising. Frequently, the government at the center and the state can be the same. Sometimes the state can also, which may be of a different nature, can also elbow the media. All of this was always the case, but it has just become more stark in the last few years, in the after COVID, when media was already crashing, media was already struggling, newspapers were struggling because of new media, because of the internet, and then suddenly, and then so broadcast media, and I speak only of Hindi and English,
Right.
overwhelmingly decided to become a mouthpiece of the government. They have, more or less. There'll be a little variation, a little elbow room here and there with one or two anchors here and there. But broadly speaking, and there are some excellent journalists in the broadcast format because they really work hard, they really go and get their stories. So I'm not at all saying that. But the tone and tenor of how a story is chosen, how the headlines are decided, have become just about supporting a certain narrative, which is not okay. Let's say you don't want to support a government, or you don't want to support the opposition, you want to just play the role of the government. It becomes very, very problematic because they become the main tool in creating a certain consciousness, which is anti-minority.
Right.
It starts there.
So coming back to traditional media, obviously, given the pressures, various kinds of pressures, they're also having to rejig their entire outlook towards business, right? With new media and social media and digital media. Social media is playing a very strong role in forcing traditional media to take a relook at its operations.
I think it's well, again, I mean, a certain kind of, if you go through my book, which is on the Bharatiya Janata Party, and you look at the media management, then you will find a very clear example of how we had a mobile revolution in India, and that's when things started to change.
Yeah.
And that happens when the cell phone goes into everyone's hand, when the data prices crash, and we have the greatest data expansion in the world, and we have the cheapest data in the world. So you have all segments of society. You travel in the US, you have to pay so much for your data, and it may not even be good in certain places. So here it's variable, but the point is there is such huge access to data, which is a phenomena of the last few years. So there is a molding of the consciousness. There is a lot of interplay between the channels and the social media traction of certain political parties. They create content which is then promoted on social media. So it's all interlinked,
Right.
part of the whole ecosystem.
Right.
It's not actually the data showed problematically is that some of the YouTubers, when the same programming goes on YouTube, it has it just crashes in front of the YouTubers.
Right.
The YouTubers, some of the big ones, who are willing to say things that the traditional media cannot, are getting far larger audiences.
And therefore, we do see a lot of former mainstream journalists also doing
They're
very well
making
on
big
YouTube.
money also over there, but that's not the reason. They're not ready to be part of the traditional broadcast media as it is, and then the traditional broadcast media is not able to compete.
Is this only, would you
Because it's
say?
just that they have control over the television, they have a license and they can broadcast. But supposing that was taken away and you just go by popularity, then certainly the YouTubers in numbers, there's no comparison.
No comparison.
None of those of a certain ideological disposition are anywhere near the top. It is all those who are challenging the state narrative, who are really rocking the airwaves on YouTube.
Right.
That's why there is an attempt to bring in new legislation through the
Which could,
broadcast,
yeah.
which could try and control them. I don't know how that works. I'm not an expert on the legalities of the broadcast bill, but it's a reaction to them. You know, I mean, I must take the name of Mr. Dhruv Rathi. He took it upon himself to campaign against the government in the election.
Right.
So
But
when
the social media
he was
backlash
getting,
also is so
he didn't
intense.
care because he was getting his a video would drop and it would go to 30 million or something
Yeah.
like that in no
But
time.
that's why he's also not in India. He
No, but he
lives
was coming to India
overseas.
also, and he was doing it from there, and he was doing it in India. And you have Ravish Kumar sitting in India and doing it every day, and you have Ajit Anjum in Hindi. You have lots of people who are doing it, but you can't pull it off in English
Right.
because the audience is too small.
But this is, you're saying that this phenomenon is limited to television only. It's as far as newspapers and magazines are concerned, you feel that there is still some amount of objectivity.
There is more accuracy because they still do try to provide news for the record. So let's say something happens. Let's say there's an attack somewhere. They won't just not cover something and cover something else. So they do try to do that, but their editorial line will be a little careful. But I don't. I think broadly the newspaper industry, the editorials, all of them, they would like to be able to be freer than they are right
Right.
now. I think they are under pressure to carry opinion pieces written by people of a certain ideological disposition. Actually, economically, newspapers are the most challenged
Absolutely. Yeah.
because I can tell you that as because I've also have taught journalism is that the new age is reading all of that on their devices.
Correct.
They're not buying the physical edition of the newspaper,
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean that they're dumb. It's just that they're looking at it differently. They're watching it, or they're reading. They have these shorts. But the physical newspaper, I buy so many, and I have to read it. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But that there's still, and I thank God because I need the newspapers because the problem with the algorithm of devices is that they will keep giving you news which they think you want to read.
Exactly. And the same thing over and
And the
over
same
again
thing over and
also.
now with
Yeah.
the newspaper, on the other hand, it can open your mind because if you don't have to do it daily, you will end up reading maybe something about what happened in Ukraine,
Yeah.
which I may not do so. You will end up reading if you turn to the international page or you turn to the editorial page. The other day I read something about Goa, some editorial opinion, which I would not read if somebody was just sending me algorithms. So I must speak out for newspapers because that if you base it on what you're reading will give you more of that. if you buy a pair of heels, we're going to show you every heels sandal in the world, right? Isn't that what's happening on that? I check out handbag on social media. For the next 10 days, I'm bombarded with
With handbag
handbags,
ads. Yeah,
handbags,
yeah.
yeah. So that I think is, and I sometimes my mind opens up, because there is a lot of engagement with political news. But then sometimes, because I read newspapers, I get on to something entirely different. And
Absolutely.
I think,
Yeah.
and that cannot come from a social media kind of thing,
True. True.
from the what comes from your device, because
True.
it's catering to a certain algorithm.
True. And, obviously newspapers have been struggling for a while. I mean, when uh, I was a journalism student, our first thing that our professors had told us is that, newspaper industry is already in the red. And it was true then. It's good to see some digital formats also coming out. I think these e-papers that are being circulated have greatly helped some of the brands as well. So they have picked up digital tools.
And another thing that works very well with them, I'll tell you, they've just get on to explainers.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
there's a whole world out there of students who study for the UPSC, who give law, who study law. So, let's say certain newspapers bring out explainers. Because so much of what is happening in the news format is now about new laws, new legislation, attempts to change laws. That, so I know of students who start subscribing, not because they plan to, because they're not going to read the paper, they need explainers. So I think newspapers are also moving in that direction. So they're moving on to explaining things. And they do it well because they still have professional journalists who are committed to some standards of fact checking working in newspapers. So I definitely believe that.
So, very interesting. You've spent a very long career as a traditional mainstream journalist, doing political reporting and others. You've been an editor as well. And today, anyone can be a journalist,
Yeah.
right? If you have a mic, you have a platform, you have Instagram Live, you can go. How do you view that? It's dangerous in some cases as well because there's chances of fake news, there's chance of misinformation, inaccuracy is the worst. WhatsApp University is blossoming.
It's just all around us. Everyone is doing it. So you could just have an ambition to be a commentator, and you can become one if you have enough of a will and enough an attitude. And the other thing that nowadays, unfortunately or fortunately, because it's a double edged sword for someone like me, is that if I write something, I get read because I have a social media following. Okay? But on the other hand, there are those who will write good stuff which may not get read. But that same rule applies to someone who has no perspective on anything besides wanting to be a advocate for a certain cause. So I see people like that. Like the other day, I had gone to a particular television station, a young man who I've seen around on some YouTube shows where I was invited. Suddenly he pops up. There is a disagreement with me, and then the next morning, he's putting it out there because I think the point of it
On
is
social media.
on social media, and he's putting communal and all over terms, but the idea is to say that I'm also there. That's what it does for him. So one has to be very, very careful. Look, I mean, I felt a little sorry for him that this is what his personality is reduced to,
Mm.
is putting on social media his little faults with whatever and
Yeah.
promoting himself. There's something a bit pathetic. So that is the intellectual level you're dealing with now in many, many cases. And these are the wannabes. So there are the journalists
Mm.
who go, but there are now the created experts who come from nowhere. They're not party spokespersons, they're not journalists, they're just people with an attitude who claim to be experts on anything and everything. And if they claim loudly for a long time, they get accepted as such if they can hold a television audience. There are many such. I won't even get into names. The trick is, are they dull, or is there something in the manner that keeps people hooked? That's
It's about
it's
TRPs.
about TRPs. So some of them, they're not party spokies.
Yeah.
They're not journalists. They are not some academics who are analyzing society. They're just there, fine.
It's a very interesting time to be a journalist. It's a challenging time. I mean, we're seeing journalism schools shutting shop. I mean, there have been a couple of them recently that have happened, which means that there is a
Who all
churn.
have shut? I haven't tracked.
Comets
Okay.
has IIJNM
Okay.
also in
Yeah.
Bangalore. We hear that some of the others are not doing as
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
of course. But there is a churn. I mean, there are a lot of it's a tough profession, correct? And how would you say this is a bad time to be a journalist in
I
anywhere
think it just
in
depends.
the
Look,
world?
I'll say one thing, Shutapa. I've had a very interesting life.
Yeah,
It's not been a life where I've got a big MBA package to take home. That's not happened. Journalism is not for those who are faint of heart. It is not for those. And I'm talking about, there are many ways of doing
yeah,
journalism. You can do, but the kind of journalism that I've done, it is not, but it's never been boring. It's been troubling. I've covered things. I feel for myself, I have watched history, contemporary history being made in
yeah.
this country and covered. So I have never been bored by this profession, but it's been unstable. There have been financial shutdowns and all of that. Like my own last publication, where I worked for 15 years, I don't think that survived. I mean, it's there, but it's not survived very well. But for me, it's worked. I was able to somehow make it. It doesn't mean that there are many people who are interested in what is happening. It may not work for all of them.
Right.
Because if you have responsibilities and a very large family, supposing you're supporting your parents and all, I mean, I have my own family, but I didn't have that burden of,
True.
of looking after others. So that
It's
kind of,
also become very unstable. Like the
that's
business
why
of it
the
has
business,
become very
so many
unstable.
good journalists lost jobs.
Yes.
There were layoffs
Massive
in media,
layoffs.
and there were such fine journalists. So that's what I'm saying. So it's been terrible for them, you know, and many of them were not willing to be part of this wild space in television where you just have to go and yell and snatch and,
Yeah.
push a line and all that and get people to say things. So they were not so very, very good journalists have suffered at the same time. But it's just one of those things, because the business of covering the news, reporting it, analyzing it, if you can pull it off in your own lifetime, it's will be great.
It's thrilling.
It's thrilling. It's also fraught with its risks. You will have high profile battles with people. You will have people sending you some legal notices.
Hmm.
That will happen. All of that, you have to be prepped for that. But these are things that just happen along the way. So when it happens, you have to be able to deal with that and move on to the next
Correct.
story. But I think what keeps me going, and I'll tell you the difference, and I feel some people, so either they have suffered very badly, or there is when you become neurotic, when there are, because the new media has made people neurotic about their image.
True.
So those are the people that you must avoid personally, because they're so neurotic. I said this, I said that, I feel this, I was there, I was trolled, I was this, I. And okay, so you get an attention for a short while. You'll get people hating you, you'll get people loving you, but you must be going insane.
Yeah.
So when you stop looking at the stories of others, that is the great achievement in journalism.
Mm.
Of course, we all walk with ourselves and we know what's happening to us, but there is far too much scope now with this device and social media and the capacity to put your photo on social media to talk about I, me, myself.
Which is not a journalist's
Which is not,
primary
forget
job.
journalism. You get into any philosophy of the world.
Yeah.
You get into anything which tells you how to keep your sanity.
True.
It's don't go on about me, me, me.
True.
Look outside yourself.
Yeah.
So that I find that very, because I've seen some people who I know just get deranged into that I, me, myself.
Yeah. And the trolls don't help. I mean, of course, now there was a time when it was truly out of control.
Yeah.
I've been trolled for various things
Yes,
in
yes,
life
yeah.
as well, and including stuff that I may have written, harmless things, including.
Yeah.
Now maybe the situation is a little better in
I
terms
don't
of.
know. I mean, it's quite bad for, like, if you happen to carry a Muslim name, but it's just an attitude. See,
True.
I've also been troubled. It's not that I've not gone through. I'm
And
not
with
this.
your following, you have a massive
I've
following.
have been this side even just in the last 24 hours. There's been this individual that I'm telling you, whatever. Some trolling has happened of me, which is disrespectful to me in a way, but I just say that it's so pathetic for the person who's doing it. Who has originated. The source origin of it
Do
is.
you engage with your
No,
trolls?
I don't. I never reply to them. Sometimes I actually spend days when I don't even look.
Good
But
way to keep your
yeah, but
sanity.
when you have come out, when you are commenting on something which involves current affairs, then sometimes you are compelled to look because
Yeah,
there's a question of, is someone pointing out an inaccuracy.
right.
But I'm just saying, so there are ways. One is, it is a tough profession. All professions can be tough, and there are some very good people who have dropped off, uh, who may still be there, but uh, you know, very committed ethical journalists. At the same time, all of us have faced trolling, if you can survive that. But if you get caught up in the I, me, myself, it's very boring for other people. You become very boring. And yes, you might have a social media following, because then you become a little like, that there's something fake invention. Then, because you're not just covering anything, you're creating a fake persona of your. Whereas the main mission of a journalist is to engage with other things.
Is to report on facts and try to stay as objectively as as possible, because there is some personal opinion which
Yeah.
does come in, but the whole piece can't be. Then it is an
You're
opinion piece.
thinking
It is not
writing,
a.
but just you
Yeah.
cannot just tweet about something. And
Yeah.
and what is journalism? Okay, let's get down to it. Forget the opinions and the views. It's what happened. Why did it happen? Where did it
Where?
happen? What time did it happen? How did it
How?
happen? Where did the train accident? I mean, isn't that the origin
Exactly.
of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened? It's
Five
fact.
W's and one
It's
H.
giving you the news.
Yeah.
So it's not that I went there and my God, people troubled me so much, and then I was trolled, and my emotions are running riot, and I'm so brave, and then but people are. That's not
Because
journalism.
everyone has stories. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
may have.
great for an Instagram personality.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
diff- that's an
It's.
Instagram personality.
I think that overlap that you have spoken about is becoming more and more. I mean, it's very difficult to tell the journalist from the influencer,
Influencer. Yeah, I think
right?
so. I think I'm also trying to understand this new age,
Hmm.
but I keep telling those who ask me that for me that's not, and I don't think it is for journalism all over.
Will you advise kids to still get into journalism if they have
I think
passion?
some of them just want to do it. Some of them just want to be part of the media space. They just
Be
do.
part of the madness for a bit.
Yeah, some of them just do.
So, in terms of press freedom, of course, our country's been ranking rather poorly. And press safety as well. We have a slew of attacks which have happened on journalists. There have been, again, arrests. Some of them are still languishing in jail. And we've seen this across states also. It's not just a certain government or certain, there are many governments, state governments involved also. How safe would you say today journalists are? And is it only that Delhi journalists face a certain reality versus.
No, no, I think journalists in the districts are much more unsafe than Delhi journalists.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Because I can tell you that in the Hindi world, for instance, uh, small publications and all, they get bumped off by
Yeah,
sand mafia and all that. We have had incidents
true.
like this. And RTI, those who are using RTI to expose somebody. So I do actually think that those in the districts are more unsafe. If they actually start exposing local corruption, and if you look, I'm from Delhi now, but I know the state of Uttar Pradesh very well. Everywhere there is something called balu mafia, sand mafia, and all that. People are threatened by those guys. They're big goons. So, and similarly, there must be similar patterns in other parts of India. So, those journalists, small town journalists, are frequently. There are two patterns. Let me just also say this. There is something called a media, which is a fake media, which is there to only get advertising from the government.
True.
Even it happens at the district level, it happens at a small town level. So, there is that paid news phenomena. It's called paid news. So, you have multiple such things who are literally there as part of this very corrupt system that we have. But at the same time, there are some very, very good journalists in the districts. There is a case involving a godman who's now in jail, who keeps getting furloughed to get out of jail. But at the origin of it was the murder of a journalist, and a small town journalist, a small paper. So I think if we start exploring that, we will find that there are the unknown people. So media is there. We are a very curious society, and they're all there. And I have the greatest respect. It's the few of us in Delhi, Bombay, we just get too much attention. Those guys out there, they are on the front lines
And
of journalism.
especially the stringers. I mean, some of them have the
Oof.
most brilliant stories.
Yes,
They've broken
yes,
stories and
yeah.
given it to larger publications. Reporters Without Borders says that India is one of the world's most dangerous country for journalists. Would you agree? Or is that a bit of an
I just find
exaggeration?
that I don't think that can be true. I mean, right now, any war zone would be more dangerous.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure this is a dated
Uh,
comment.
I don't think it's India's. Yeah, because I've been able to manage. I mean, you get. Look, again, as I repeat, it would be in the districts where things can
No,
be really
yeah,
unsafe. Not for all of us sitting in the city.
true.
We'll get trolled, but nobody. The troll is not going to come to your house and have you bumped off. These guys do. We should have a. There are real risks involved when you take on those who do mining, those who do land grabbing. That is where the interest.
And are journalists being able to protect their own when
I think
one is attacked, whether it's intellectually or something
I think so.
like a
I can
death
only share
happens?
with you that in Delhi, I know that the media bodies
Hmm.
have managed to remain within the. There has been a very within elections in the press club, women's press club. There has been an attempt to take over by what would be called the right wing, and they have failed. You know, so those have been big battles for the Delhi media, and that is so because then you can take positions on various things. Every now and then, when something happens, then you can say that the Press Club of India is bothered by what has happened to ex journalists, which would not happen if they had all been defeated. So they have stood their own in spite of changes in government. The media bodies here, the media collectives, there was a similar attempt for well-known people to take over the Editors Guild. They failed again over there. That's not happened. The only thing is that none of these media bodies, Editors Guild and all this, so they're still in the control because they involve certain level of elections.
Hmm.
What that tells you is that the media that lives in Delhi or Editors Guild also involves elections from all over, is that they still want a liberal, open source media. They're not
Right.
willing to what them repeatedly winning the elections.
Right.
But the attempt to dislocate them is very clear in the media bodies elections.
But how the journalists in the district level, I mean the ones whose lives are at
Yeah,
risk, uh, it's impossible almost to protect them.
I think so. Yeah, there's no concept of insurance that you insure someone and send them on assignment. It just doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
You can be sent to tough assignment, but there's no concept of that here.
Hmm.
But no,
It's a tough
it's a very tough.
profession
It's a very
on
tough.
that side, and this is years that we've heard
Yeah,
things like this happening, and they continue to happen,
yeah,
and yet there is not much
yeah.
one can do. um let's talk about a bit about your journey. You, of course, as I said, you've been a great body of work. You're a veteran journalist and editor as well, but you're also a woman in journalism. um do you think the scope of women's safety has expanded, has become better, strengthened after Me Too? How have your personal experiences been, and where's the room for improvement?
I look. I certainly think that people would be very careful after the Me Too movement because definitely there were people in the media who it was all over society actually. Men just behaved in a certain way because successful men, that too, at the top of their professions, it was just par for the course. We've just had a whole thing coming out of Kerala
Yeah,
right now
yeah,
about the film industry. And by the way, they make brilliant films.
absolutely.
The Malayali film industry makes the most intellectually satisfying films, you know.
Yeah.
And so the Me Too movement, it's all part of a worldwide phenomena in all the professions.
Hmm.
And certainly there were people within the Indian media space who were prominent, who were well known, who behaved in a certain way. I don't think people would risk that anymore
Yeah.
after what happened. But I'm sure that harassment and all that doesn't end overnight at the same time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I've not heard anything since that high profile Me Too thing when some individuals were called out.
Right.
I've not heard any report of it in the last few years.
I think people are more careful
People are more
now.
careful, and I've not heard anyone coming out and saying.
Right. But having said that, I think journalism as a profession, men and women both taken together, still requires certain safeguards, right? I mean, talk about the hours that they work. Every time, Narayan Murthy says 70-hour weeks, and if I look back at when I was a journalist, that was normal. That was like we didn't bat an eyelid, and I think there are hundreds of them doing it even today. So, do you think somewhere the work life of a journalist requires some relook?
It's not just journalism. I'll be very honest with you. Is that lawyers also, when they start out,
Oh,
my
yeah.
God, it's like crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Because my own daughter is there. I mean, it's worse than journalists. So, young people everywhere are made to work a lot. There's no doubt about that. But I do think we should have those guidelines in, but it's not going to happen. We should have it to make it a better space. But I also feel that there have been a lot of changes in the last few years. You know,
To make it, to
no,
improve it.
about women. This since you
Right.
linked it up to me too. I think people are careful about women. When I was also in the media and some of the most liberated places that I worked in, women were also not even getting the same salaries.
Hmm.
And I think people would be careful about that, at least in the legacy media organizations.
Right.
That would have changed.
The pay gap.
I've been in a situation where I was doing more work than men and I was getting paid less. And I used to say it to them. But nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
I said, why am I sitting here giving you guys all the stories and you've just walked in with these? I said it. So I was hugely unpopular with in that small. I mean, I was popular with my lot of people, but these new guys who had walked in with all these fat things.
Do you think that's changed now?
I hope it has, but I suspect people can, if they can, they will carry on
They
doing so.
yeah.
But to an extent, yes, because now you could really go on social media and really yell about it if you. But so, like I'm saying, I think legacy organizations will be more careful.
Right.
But it was happening till a few years ago.
Yeah.
You know.
So social media is a double-edged sword. So there are the good things that it can be used for as well. Sometimes you even highlight some of the anomalies
Yeah.
which exist. When you look back at your career, and I know you've done a lot of on-ground reporting as well. Any stories which are like highlights or any incidents which
Oh,
you
there's
would
so many.
always
I've been doing this for over 3 decades now.
wow.
So there's so much, and plus there's one set of work of mine which was also carried as a column when I was in my 20s in Indian Express, but which also made a book, which is called In Good Faith, where I
Right.
went all over India and I reported on plural syncretic traditions. And that book 2 years ago won the Sahitya Academy Award, the Marathi edition,
Wow.
which is interesting to me since
And you've written 4 books,
I've written
Saba,
four
right?
books. That book I did out of that. So that was 2 years of just being on the field in India,
Wow.
just traveling non-stop and writing. But of course, I was in my 20s then, so I was much younger. But still, I think that gave me a grounding. But so that work is very dear to me, and my experiences in traveling are very dear. And of course, my whole journey, even I covered the BJP for many years, and I've written books on them where there are two editions of the same book, updated. One is
Right.
called Shades of Saffron, one is called Saffron Storm. So they're all there. But even covering the party was very, very interesting because I was watching history being made.
Amazing.
Yeah, so all of that, there's been so many anecdotes. The book is just chock a block full of it.
So let's touch upon your let's talk about the minority identity. How has that, it's a very strange time to be in the world when there is also a lot of Islamophobia. There is hatred. There are weird incidents happening. There are wars happening, and then you have the extremely polarizing social media trolling and all that. How have you navigated this? And we were just speaking offline, so I'd love to have that here as well.
Look, I navigated it just fine. It's only been in the last decade that it's become a thing.
Right.
Even in the Vajpayee era, it was not a thing. Now it's a thing where
Right.
people note you and social media is used to profile. So even in that extremity, a certain extreme profile is going on now. This is a phenomenon of the last decade in India.
Would you also say it's globally happening the same? Because we do see that in other countries also, right?
No, the global thing was going on in after the 9/11, which
Yeah.
happens so long
Yeah.
ago. The clash of civilization theory begins
Hmm.
then.
Right.
But so it was still not happening on that scale in India. But it's happening in the last decade because it's systematically being made to happen.
Right.
You know, if you follow social media today, you'll find a journalist as somebody has put out a list of Muslim reporters who have said that X this incident took place. So MLA has put out a list saying all those guys who said this happened are all Muslims. Now, it's wild stuff. So it's happening now in the last decade.
And data check, fact checking and data checking is almost absent. I think in many. I mean, we do see, of course, initiatives now. Alt news has a whole fact checking. Some of the traditional media started teams
Yeah.
which are, they are saying it's fact checked by us.
No. Yeah.
It's become the mandatory requirement now because there's so much
Because
of
no,
misinformation.
so the whole media perception, all of this is it's being deliberately created now. So I mean, look, I am for me it was never a big deal. I was absolutely fine. It's only in the last decade that the conversation has become so toxic.
Right. There is, the existence of the fourth estate depends on it remaining objective.
Well, it's not objective. So that, but you have some fabulous work happening on online. Uh,
Yeah.
you have good platforms. You have good reporting. All of that is happening not in traditional media. It's happening in online.
Do you follow regional media trends at all,
Not so
Sabha?
much.
Not so much, right? Except, of course, Hindi being,
Hindi
uh,
because it's the politics around me
yeah,
is in Hindi and I
yeah.
follow Hindi.
Hindi also reaches the largest number of
Yeah,
readers, both newspaper as well as
yeah,
online as well,
yeah, yeah.
right?
It does.
Television
It
and
does. Yeah,
online,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Why are there any media trends regional that?
No, because there is a lot of consumption of short format news, short format, all kinds of videos, but also news. And we heard that, some reports say that Marathi and Bengali are doing quite well. Some of the readers, especially in these two groups, question a lot of news that comes their way. Because they feel that, which is again, there is a decline of trust. It's a global decline in the trust of news content which is coming to our devices, because it could be fake, it could be inaccurate. But a couple of these groups in a study that we've found, they've kind of raised red flags on it. Of course, Southern media is also doing very well in terms of the
Yeah,
content that they're putting out.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like there is a lot of change
Look,
happening.
Maharashtra. I can talk about Maharashtra at some length. Maharashtra is it's been the land of Ambedkar was born in Maharashtra. The Jyotirao Phule was from Maharashtra. Dabholkar was in Maharashtra. So there are all sorts of ideological trends in that region, both of the right wing and of social justice and everything. So people think, like I'm saying to you, that I was completely startled when this book of mine, when a Marathi edition, which means that a Marathi panelists sit on it, the translation wins the Sahitya Academy Award. So they are very politically alert people, regardless of whatever way. It's a society that thinks in
Right.
various ways. It's a very complex. It's a very interesting sort of a
Right.
place, and I'm sure the same applies to Bengal also.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, for us, discussion has always been the bedrock of, we
Yeah,
love
absolutely.
arguments and we love talking about things. And my personal view, of course, is that, as long as we keep talking, there is hope. The
Yeah,
moment we start stifling a voice, that's when the problems start. I
yeah.
mean, opinions should be there as long as they are backed by
By
facts.
facts, and as long as this opinion is not just spreading hate and prejudice.
Absolutely.
You know.
So this thin line between journalists and influencers, there is a little gray area. Then between facts and propaganda, there is a
There
gray
is a
area.
very grey area, and it's crossed every day.
Yeah.
It's crossed every day.
That's why, I mean, the reason we want to do this episode is also because journalists are so important to any democracy, because we depend on them for reporting of facts. And somewhere that's becoming more and more difficult to find. I mean, you really have to look at certain stories and journalists to believe what they're
You have
writing.
to follow websites, you have to
Yeah,
follow collectives for reporting, you have to do all that. But it's there, it's not that it's stopped being done.
it's there.
It's
It's
just
there.
that if you just put on the channels every night, then you're not going to find that kind of stuff there. If you Newspapers will also carry some of it after it crosses a certain frontier, you know.
The best thing I heard recently was switch off the news channels. I mean, just don't watch them. There's hardly anything to write home to. Newspapers, magazines, and as you said, collectives. I think some great stories come out of these collectives. Pari does some
Pari
good
does
research. Yeah,
amazing work.
very nice. India's Pen was doing. I think they
But
had
that's
some.
shut down,
That's shut down.
I think.
Data-backed stories they were doing, but
Reporters
that's
Collective is doing
report.
investigations. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
So there are people who are doing it. And
yeah,
Pari is a gorgeous site. I mean,
yeah,
it just reports from the ground, which
yeah.
even traditional media did not do. So it
Yes.
fills a vacuum. So it has to be our
Yeah.
thing to support, read, such
And subscribe.
and subscribe.
And subscribe.
Yeah.
So, some parting thoughts for the younger, you do teach journalism. So, for the younger kids who are looking to make it, what are your parting thoughts to them?
No,
Lessons,
I still
tips?
think journalism is a very, very lively, vibrant profession. It's not a stable profession. But you can get into fields, and even I don't know the technology, the way young kids today define new media, the way they tell stories with so much of imaging and videos, all of that. So it's an exciting field, because telling the story of what is happening around us will always be interesting. It will never be boring. And and that's also if you are a person who's interested in just following what's happening, it's lively, it's interesting. If you have certain values that you want to propagate, then also media is the only way to go. So I still think media is very vital, and it's been a great run for me.
That's excellent. And they should also learn how to pick up the tools of social media, which is every day emerging,
I
right?
should learn that.
I think you've done a very good
No,
job
I
of
just
it.
Twitter. I'm not on Instagram much. I mean, I have an account, but people say do. I say, how can I every day put one tweet, then put a photo? It's too much, no? Where will I get time to read or do anything else? And then record one show.
Yeah,
Time management is very, very proper. The problem is, I think one of the things I've realized in life is that with social media, you can just spend hours doing this, going like this, and the whole day is gone. So you have to train yourself that sometime, and sometimes you can't do it, because otherwise your brain is really going to
yeah.
be
Fried.
fried. Or
Yeah.
the other problem is, then you, even as a journalist, will get into, oh my god, I got so many likes, or I didn't get likes. You'll be, just do your work.
Hmm.
And the extension of that is the people who teeter between being journalists and Instagram personalities.
Right.
So that is a very big. But
That's very
I think
interesting.
journalists know who they are.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like we all know, like when that happens, and many people also avoid doing that.
Yeah, because social media can be very exhausting. It can be very distracting, and it can give you a very blinkered approach to life. Also, it can widen your horizon, but
Absolutely.
it can give you a
Yeah,
blinkered perception as well.
absolutely. And then you think it's all. Supposing you start getting trolled, then you literally think the world is about me.
Yeah,
Oh my god, I'm getting trolled. What'll happen? They're attacking me. Arey yaar, you don't count.
in the larger
The
scheme of
largest scheme
things.
thing, you don't count. It's a 1 5 minute, 10 minute, and I know as someone who's being trolled.
Yeah.
So I worked through it and I let it be. So that's what can I say, huh?
No, I think that's very well said. I think that's a lot of wisdom from somebody who's done it in 3 decades plus. Thanks so much, Saba, for
My
coming on.
pleasure, Shutapa. All the very best to you and your
Thank you.
enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on What India Needs podcast. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, leave them below. Thank you. See you next time.